Hello, good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our data center security webinar with VMware NSX today. So we're joined here by Rika and Ramez from VMware, who'll be going through the webinar with you. And then we also have Simon Dobbs from Software Services, who'll be discussing a free assessment we're offering at the end of the webinar.
Cool, thank you very much. So just to do a quick introduction, I guess, before we start. So my name is Rika and I work at VMware as a NSX specialist or account executive aligned directly to a number of customers in the UK. I've been with VMware for about a year, and my background is Cisco data center solutions and products, etc. So I'm going to pass it on for a quick introduction to Ramez.
Morning, everyone. So I'm Ramez. I currently work at VMware as a sales specialist on NSX, or Network and Security Platform. I've been in the industry for nearly 20 years. For my sins, I started out like everyone does on help desks, and have been an IT manager for a number of years before moving into consulting and working for vendors, including Cisco, of course, as many of us here at VMware do.
So just quickly run through the agenda, and I'm going to pass it back to Ramez to go through some of the content, and I'll come back at the end. So obviously we don't have an awful lot of time, and what we find is talking about NSX and kind of getting the entire message across can be sometimes challenging over a teleconference or webinar like that. But we'll try our best. I guess the main purpose of it is for you to understand the basic concepts. There will be a number of case studies that Ramez is going to talk about to give you the confidence and show you how we've done and what we've done with NSX with other organizations out there. So we'll start with high-level NSX use cases and what NSX actually does. The main purpose of this webinar is to highlight security. So you will see that there are a number of use cases when we talk about NSX, but security has been absolutely the number one use case that about 70 to 80% of our customers are looking at and purchasing NSX for. So this is going to be the main focus of today's session. And then moving on to the third bit of the agenda, where you see network visibility and analytics. So when you will see we talk about security and how today's data center is built and what challenges our customers are facing, it can be sometimes difficult to move to a new estate and apply new techniques and move into a more kind of advanced security model inside of the data center. So what we're going to talk about is a company that we recently purchased. Well, it's a solution, but obviously it's a company that we purchased not too long ago, about 6 months ago, Arkin, that provided us with a platform that helps us planning some of the moves when it comes to segmenting the data center from a different perspective, and giving us better control and visibility of what happens inside of the data center. So this is what we call VRNI, or the longer version is vRealize Network Insights. And then at the end, I just wanted to cover licensing a little bit. So that's a question obviously or customers ask us quite a lot: how it's licensed, what sorts of bundles are available, and then we'll discuss some of the potential next steps that you can take if you wish to further investigate and understand what NSX is about and what it can do for you. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Ramez.
Okay, thank you, Rika.
Let's start with the content.
All right. So I appreciate people on the call may actually have different sort of roles and responsibilities in your organization. And we kind of typically start off with where VMware's bread and butter has been for a number of years, which is essentially in operations. So what we see here is that the typical sort of challenges that people have in their environments, particularly as they become quite heavily virtualized. When I mean heavily virtualized, I would expect many of you to be at least 50% plus virtualized in terms of your server estate. That's very common. If that's not the case for you, I apologize, but we typically find people are 70+% virtualized. And that poses lots of benefits, but there are, of course, some challenges as well. And so what we see on here is we have problems such as segregating networks. So on the left, you've got these colorful little bubbles, and they're represented by, in this particular case, just some random things. So we've put together production workloads, non-production workloads, which could be your test or your development environments. An example there of PCI is around the payment card industry, where that is just one example of many where you might have sort of highly secure areas that you might need to protect. This is going to be even more so the case when you have GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations, coming into force next year. And then, of course, we have many customers who offer some kind of shared service, and that shared service could be a service offering to different kinds of end users, departments, business units, and in some cases, they're actually child or sister companies. Lots of people going through mergers and acquisitions. So having to manage these different set of workloads in what is ideally one single private cloud doesn't always end up being that case. Doing things in terms of setting things up and deploying things and changing things around can be very manual, very time-consuming. And so these will link into our what I call the 3 bucket use cases that we're showing on the screen here. So at a high level, these are the typical sort of return on investment and business value drivers we see for NSX. Security, we'll be talking a bit more about that one later on, but predominantly is going to be focused around microsegmentation and how you resolve the challenges that you would typically resolve today through firewalls in a highly virtualized environment. The other one is around automation. People expect things to be done quicker than ever before. I mean, everyone's got some sort of smartphone app. You want something, you go to the App Store, you download it. Guess what? Our users want that service from you guys today. They want that from us. They want people to be able to deliver new applications. That could be entire finance system, HR system, a new email system. They want that thing done quick. And of course, they expect it to be done securely. So how can we help resolve that? How can NSX help? And then the last one there we call application continuity. So what we're talking about here is sort of the next step, or the more relevant step, should we say, of business continuity for people like you guys. So we're talking about applications and services. When we talk about business continuity, it could be how do we make sure the business keeps running? Of course, it doesn't always talk about IT. So what we're talking about here is as you have a single or many data centers, how do you make sure the applications can continue to run? How do you make the best use of those data centers you've invested in, whether they're your own or third parties? So what we've got is some examples from customers who've been very happy to share some data with us. So this one is Columbia Sportswear. So they're probably not very well known in the United Kingdom, but you might have seen them as you got abroad, not necessarily just in the US. And this is their quote from how they benefited from NSX from a security perspective. So they refer to something called east-west traffic, which is typically the movement of data across the network from one server to another. So we refer to that as east-west traffic. And that has been one of the biggest challenges. And if you follow any of the security breaches and articles that you see out in the news, we can name drop companies like Sony, for example, where their breach was a result of non-secured east-west traffic between virtual machines and servers. So this is a great quotation from Columbia. And of course, the other thing that's very relevant to anyone who's using a VMware vSphere ESXi platform today is we're all using vMotion. So anyone who understands what vMotion is, that VM moves from one physical box to another without any downtime. Now, in order to maintain a set of security with that virtual machine as it moves from one box to another, or even from one data center to another, is extremely valuable and is a big challenge for people trying to do that without NSX. So the next one we have on here, another United States company, or organization rather, so University of New Mexico, and this is how they benefited from the automation piece. So this is what I refer to, getting things done quicker, more efficiently, and more securely. And I love the quote here because self-service provisioning has gone down from 3 weeks to 20 minutes. I love this because they're a real-life customer, and this is something we'd love to help you guys achieve, right? So we will be talking more about security, but just bear in mind there's a lot you can leverage from NSX to actually help build out automation, whether that's using open source technologies and containers, for example, or using traditional services that you might do today. So we can definitely help you along this journey. And then finally, the application continuity. So Basic Health is a health organization in the United States. And what they've done here is probably do more than what most of us in the UK would do. They have 3 data centers. where they were not all running what we call an active state. So you would have potentially an active, passive, or something along those lines. And of course, managing those multiple data centers has challenges because you might need multiple panes of glass, as we call them, multiple different networks, and it's not easy to move workloads between those different data centers. So what they've got here is this ultimate goal, I think that people would love to have, is that all three data centers behave and operate as if they were in a single rack. And that is a great story to tell. In addition to that, there have been financial benefits. So reaping a benefit of $7 million, I mean, that's pretty impressive for some there. So not only is it helping them in terms of operations and just being slicker and smarter when it comes to things like disaster recovery, business continuity, but they're also making significant financial savings there by being able to sweat their assets more. So they're sweating those data center assets and making better use of them. Of course, we don't always want to just talk about U.S. organizations, so I do have a couple of slides following from these ones. We talk about a couple of UK customers, but I wanted to point out on these slides here, again, reiterating the financial benefits or the quantitative benefits to the NSX solution. So you've got in blue across the middle some of the quantitative measurements and achievements that our customers have gained, such as the $2 million in saving from Columbia, the 300% boost in productivity, and the $7 million in savings that we already just talked about. So I mean, you'll be getting a copy of these slides early for them, but these are stories we love to share with people, and we'd love you guys to be, potentially in the future as part of this as well. Now, in terms of some of the UK customers on this slide, we've had the British Army, and again, the British Army has a fantastic case to discuss. We won't go into full details today. They have done a video for us at one of the VMworld sessions. So VMworld is an event we run once every year, and we have a lot of customers that come and present at those events, tell their side of the story of how they benefited from using our solutions, whether it's NSX or otherwise. But in this particular case, just on load balancers alone, purely on their load balancer budget, the British Army recognized that through the use of NSX, because we can deliver load balancers within a solution, they were able to save £500,000. That's pretty significant. So this is, like I said, in addition to all the other sort of ROI benefits they reap, just the load balancers alone, that's £500,000. Now, appreciate not everyone has a load balancer budget that's that size, but it's still worth bearing in mind. And then the other one is Ladbrokes. So again, a very good automation use case, because their ability to deploy new services and applications went down from 90 days to 10 minutes. In a little bit more detail, we do have here sort of a full list of some of the things that Ladbrokes have gained. We have people on our own team, myself and Rika, that have worked on this particular customer in the UK. We have other similar customers who've achieved very, very similar outcomes and benefits. So just to go into a bit of detail about how you can gain the benefits from NSX. Now, what we did when we acquired Nicira, which is the company that the technology behind NSX originally came from a few years back, we entered a market that we were never part of before. So you see here on this slide that Gartner last year put us on there and the data center networking. So data center networking is typically a hardware vendor's field, right? That's their playing field for the Cisco's, the Aristas, the Brocades, and so on. And you can see us down there as a visionary. So being on the right-hand side is a great achievement for somebody that was never in that space before. And we recognize we can really help people do this, and we obviously have links with the hardware vendors to really provide the true ROI around data center networking. So that your data center networking is not something you just realize on hardware, and then as far as your 100 or 200 or 300 virtual machine estate, nothing touches that. We want to make sure that we can extend the capabilities of your data center networking, provisioning, your control, your visibility, your security, right into and up to that virtual machine. And of course, the number of customers we have on the platform we're gaining. So we only acquired Nicira about 4-ish years ago. So we've done something pretty impressive. We have a lot of customers who are now licensed and use the product, and we're making some significant headway with deployments as well. So we want to make sure our software is not what we call shelfware, and we always work very hard with our customers to make sure that they're realizing the benefits from the licenses they've acquired. So quite a broad adoption. There's a lot of logos and company names on there. Of course, a lot of them will be global companies, but we have a number of UK customers, not all of which are happy to be put on a public slide like that, but anyone who's in your industry, we can tend to put you in touch with who's actually currently deployed and benefiting from the use of the NSX platform. And in addition to customers, we have a number of partners. So we don't have time to go a lot of details into this kind of thing today, but just be aware that we are a platform service that sits on top of the ESXi vSphere solution. So as part of that platform, we provide a lot of capabilities ourselves, but in order for you to maximize your benefit from the solution, if you're an existing F5 customer, if you're an existing Checkpoint customer, Palo Alto customer, or you're considering some of their solutions, you'll be quite happy to know that these people have very good, solid integration points with the NSX platform to help build out that network vulnerability scanning, that load balancing solution, that firewalling from a single pane of glass. So like I said, unfortunately, we haven't got a lot of time to go into this, but just be aware there's a lot of third-party vendors we work with. We certify their solutions to work with our product, and it really extends the capability of what the NSX solution can offer, as well as what their solutions can offer. So that was my introduction, and we're just going to spend a few slides going into how we achieve security with the NSX platform. What we have on here is anyone who's been in security before will recognize these things. And what we've typically done in the past is focus on the one on the left. So the one on the left, that reducing the attack surface. And that's something we've typically done essentially from the perimeter. So we've put perimeter defenses on through your traditional firewalls, whether that's just a layer 3 firewall or layer 4 firewall, even if you go into what we call next-gen firewalls. But then what we have to do is people have to consider security, whether security is part of your full-time job as a title, or if it's just expected of you, is you have to do all the other things as well. You have to mitigate what those threats and vulnerabilities are. You have to do a bit of a risk assessment on your environment, work out where to put stronger security controls and where you may not need them. And then you obviously need to be able to monitor what's happening in your environment, because without monitoring, you cannot possibly respond to those attacks. Again, a lot of the breaches that we've seen, both in the UK and outside, have been a result of people who have been have had a breach and not even known about it, potentially for several days, weeks, and in some cases months. So you need to make sure that you've got the right tools in place to help you build that. So you need to protect, as well as monitor, and as well as have the right tools to enable you to respond. We appreciate the response part may well be a procedure and policy, but without the right tools, there's no way you would know how to actually initiate those procedures and policies. So we referred to the east-west traffic before, and what we see here in this gray area is, again, this fairly typical way that a lot of breaches are happening today. People are utilizing and taking advantage of the lowest common denominator, the weakest point, the weakest link, and that can often be something like a web server. It could be a SQL injection attack. It could be a VDI platform that somebody's managed to access because they've stolen someone's smart card, or they were able to get someone's password, or even just use social engineering to get the person's password. And guess what? Once they've done that, they're inside your network. The network that we thought was always secure. So they got into your crown jewels. What do they do once they get there? Well, guess what? They don't assume that that target that they've managed to initiate an attack on is the be-all and end-all. They're going to start hunting down for more things. They're going to try and take control of your network, get enterprise admin privileges. They're going to try and get access into your databases. With Sony, they actually exfiltrated a lot of movies out of the public internet. So they named and shamed those guys. We don't want anyone else to be victims of this. So this is a great way where NSX can help. Trying to do this in hardware today using traditional methods is extremely challenging, because how would you achieve that? You would try and put a firewall in between every virtual machine? Well, that's pretty tricky. It's costly, and there's a lot of overhead in having to manage each of those firewalls. And of course, there are ways to do this through physical firewalls, but also virtual ones. And then anyone who understands networking means you'll have an idea of what that means as far as network bottlenecks, throughput, latency, and all of that is concerned. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time with that, but what we want to do here is set the scene and a level of appreciation for what you might have to do and what we can actually achieve with NSX. So we actually do put a firewall in between at your virtual machine. We actually put a firewall at the edge of the virtual network interface card, they're called the VNIC. And we can protect the traffic at that level, at a layer 4 level, before it even hits the switch. And the different ways you can actually create these sort of firewall rules is you can go for isolation. So there on the left, we have a typical method where People may have one single physical data center and actually utilize that physical data center to deploy test, production, and development workloads. And again, this is a great way for realizing the benefits of NSX, because what you can now do is not have a set of firewalls, switches, and racks and servers for your development network, another one for your test network, another one for your production environment. You can actually have a true private cloud with true isolation between all those environments. And again, we have lots of customers, including people from the Ministry of Defense in the UK, who have achieved exactly this through the use of NSX and realized massive financial savings because they didn't have to reinvest in lots of new hardware. The second one down the line is where, out of the box with NSX, you can start to benefit, because we can deploy a virtual router, a virtual firewall, pretty much anywhere in your vSphere environment. And what you have there is what we call a three-tier application with a web and application and database backend. And some of you may recognize this model where you have different networks or different VLANs where each of those types of services live. Each of those services may be filtered through a firewall of some kind, but the chances are we're finding most customers in a virtual environment don't do that because it just introduces so much overhead and inefficiencies. Now, what you explicitly see there in terms of the arrows is that the web tier will typically only communicate, or should only communicate, with the application tier, and the application tier with the database tier. If we, for example, allow the web front-end server to talk to the database server, well, that's a potential for some sort of SQL injection attack. So somebody attacks your public-facing website and gains access to your database tier, exfiltrates a whole bunch of data. We really don't want that to happen. So with the layer 4 firewalling technologies that we can offer with NSX, you can really control this to a fairly good level. So you can control the ports, the destinations, the sources, the VLANs. You can even go as far as actually choosing which clusters in vSphere are protected and the direction of flow of traffic as well. And the one there on the right-hand side is where we take advantage of those third-party partners and services. So whether it's Symantec, Trend Micro, Palo Alto, those services can truly enhance the level of security beyond just a basic level 4 firewall. So you can choose what kind of workloads to protect using that kind of solution or deployment method there. So we offer a distributed platform. We're based on software-defined networking, which is what Nice Zero was about. So this is about being able to scale your networking technology. So physical and virtual firewalls, they have some of their limitations. But once you can distribute that and manage it from one place, the same way you manage your vSphere environment today with just one vCenter server, hopefully most of you are doing that, then you will realize the benefits of being able to put one security policy, follow the virtual machine anywhere, and you can add and build on that data center pretty much as you do today. So if you add a new host to your cluster, guess what? It's part of that cluster automatically. And any of the policies you created for that cluster will be added to those new sets of servers. So if you're doing a rip and replace or an upgrade, then all of this can happen. If you paid attention to anything that VMware have been talking about over the last year, working with public cloud providers like AWS and IBM SoftwareDefined, for example, then this is a great way to realize the benefit of this, because you're now pushing your routing, your load balancer, and your firewall route policies not only within your private data center, but potentially beyond and out into their public cloud as well, because they're running on basically a very similar flavor to what you would offer in your own data center. So they're running on vSphere and NSX. And here again, some of the highlights or benefits of our type of firewall. Because it's baked into the ESXi hypervisor, you can realize extremely high throughput rates. So we're not limited to 1 or 10 gig. For example, we've seen customers achieve potentially up to 80 gigabit of throughput from the virtual firewall in NSX. The enforcement point is right at the network level, right at the network card, and the gains there from east-west firewalling and the ability to scale quite significantly with every additional host that you add onto your cluster. So your firewalls can be everywhere and, quite importantly, centrally managed. So we're going to make sure that we don't add too much overhead to the work that you have to do in operations. So what we would do is that taking your existing environment and trying to turn it into software-defined center, true software-defined data center. So if you've heard about vSAN, that's our software-defined storage solution, and NSX is our software-defined networking solution. Building that true software-defined data center and able to do all these things. So you see down the left in the green, built-in services we offer out of the box with NSX, and the areas on the right in the orange are the numbers of different sort of services that you can get through the third parties that integrate with NSX. So you can actually create policies to automate a lot of these things to happen, like your antivirus, your intrusion detection, and vulnerability management as well. So I hope that's given you an idea of what we can offer in terms of security. Now, we acquired, as Rita mentioned, a partner who was a third-party integration partner called Arkin last year. And very quickly, potentially within about a month of acquiring them, we added them to our portfolio. So the vRealize portfolio, if anyone's familiar with our operational suites, we have vRealize automation, orchestration, and operations, for example. So here we have vRealize Network Insight, is what we renamed or rebadged the product as. And it quite simply offers you and gives you visibility inside your network. So today, if you have a virtual network through a basic vSwitch, or if you're using a distributed switch from vSphere, then one of the challenges you're going to have with your network team, if you ask them to try and analyze a problem, is they're going to say, you know what, I don't have access to see what's going on in your network. And they'll say, we have all the tools we need to manage what's on the physical side, and our boxes and our appliances, but we haven't a clue on how to even start to help you and troubleshoot your environment in the virtual world. And of course, as people start to look at moving towards the software-defined data center through the use of NSX, for example, then that poses even more challenges. What we're doing is we're taking more functionality and intelligence that we would have traditionally put in hardware and putting it in software. So to make sure that you guys are still efficient, can troubleshoot and actually understand what's happening in your virtual environment, this is a great tool to help you. There's a mention there on the top of Log Insight, by the way. So Log Insight is our syslog tool. Very similar to Splunk. If any of you are familiar with Splunk or any other similar vendors, you actually get a Log Insight license to match your NSX license. And again, that's simply to help you from an operational visibility and troubleshooting perspective. So with regards to VRNI, microsegmentation is something that not a lot of people have had exposure to before. Never had to actually create firewall rules for every single virtual machine. And so what the vRealize Network Insight solution will do is actually give you a report to tell you what kind of traffic is flowing in your environment. The other thing it can do is because it now links very nicely into both vSphere, vCenter, and the NSX platform, you can get some pretty cool operational metrics and visibility out of it, so you can know what parts of your environment are running well and which parts are not. So one of the areas that is actually pretty cool here is anyone who's done a lot of stuff around networking will understand the kinds of challenges that you have if you've ever poorly configured, should we say, OSPF or BGP. So those are the two sort of main industry standard routing protocols that we use in NSX. And that can cause a lot of grief. And so VRNI, for example, can actually tell you exactly where you have a mismatch or a problem in your configuration of those kinds of protocols. And then lastly, we have the visibility analytics. So this is where the platform will give you true visibility here, and we have a couple of screenshots on the kinds of things you will see. So this particular example there shows you sort of a numerical analysis of the kinds of traffic you have. So you think about all the data that goes through your virtual network. This will all be logged in a database, and of course you can analyze that and crunch those numbers to your heart's content. But of course, what it does tell you is how your network is being utilized in that virtual data center. And obviously, this can greatly help in planning for future growth of your data center when it comes to both physical hardware as well as your virtual platform. You have a much better understanding of what is going on, where traffic is going, and potentially where to create firewall rules for it as well. And this is what we mean by security policy automation. So within NSX, there are ways to create security policies that essentially follow the workloads or that look at certain types of workloads, and that could be based, for example, purely on like your finance servers and making sure that you have a particular type of policy that follows them. And we refer there on the left, for example, what's called the zero trust model. So instead of allowing everything and blocking things by exception, is we allow by exception and block everything else. And this is the way a lot of things are going. So again, if you look at things like PCI DSS and GDPR as standards, they're all promoting this zero trust or whitelisting model. And it's very challenging to achieve. And with VRNI, this is something that is much easier because you have a lot of visualizations around the types of traffic. So there on the right, I know it's difficult to see, but we have a lot of the different VLANs that are communicating, different types of servers and the ports that they're using, for example. And then finally, this is a great troubleshooting tool. So what you see there is the actual path that a network packet takes to go from one virtual machine to another. And you'll notice there that it isn't just giving you information about the physical network it's passing, but it's every single virtual firewall, every single virtual switch and virtual router that is traversing in that path is mentioned on there. And again, we can always run a live demo so that you can see exactly what you can and cannot do with this. But you will get a lot of information about the firewall rules on each of those switches, what the switch port groups are, what VLANs are configured on that switch, where that switch lives. There's quite a lot of data to see there, and really, really helps in terms of troubleshooting. And there we have just a quick summary of the kinds of benefits that you will get with the vRealize Network Insight platform. So with that, we're going to move on to some of the other information we're going to share with you today.
Perfect. So just before we close off, I wanted to share the slide with you and just take you through exactly how we license NSX. So the NSX is licensed by physical sockets on a server. So typically, to be honest, most of the time we see our customers having dual socket servers. So in that case, obviously, you would have 2 licenses per server that you would need to license. And if you remember back to the beginning when Ramesh was talking about the different use cases of NSX, and he mentioned 3 of them. So there was automation, obviously security that he's gone into a lot more details, and application continuity. So the licensing packages are aligned to these use cases. So standard is aligned to automation. Advanced is aligned to the security use case, so that gives you the additional feature of having those firewalls included and giving you the opportunity to do that micro-segmentation that we've just gone through. And then the third one is application continuity, as I said, which is then what you get with the enterprise edition. And what it allows you to do is that at the moment we talked about a single data center and a single site, but what the application continuity allows you to do is to stretch that network between different locations. And I think there was an example of a health organization that used that feature and essentially was able to provide or see all 3 or 4 data centers as a single pool of resources. So the last one that you see on the right hand side is Robo. So that is a fairly new addition to the portfolio, and I know it's a little bit of a detailed slide, but that's something that we can give you as a reference later on, so you see exactly what's included in which bundle. Sometimes I get the question whether NSX can be licensed by virtual machines, and the answer is yes, you can, but we only see that typically be used in a VDI environment. And then what we would do is, you would need to have a look at what makes more sense based on the consolidation ratio, whether it would make sense to license something by CPU or by the actual instances. So that is about licensing. And the final thing before I pass it back to Bite to talk about the technical discovery, vRealize Network Insight, I wanted to share with you a couple of things that you can do as a next step. So Handson Labs, you'll see the link there. That is available for anybody to go and play around with NSX there. We do have, and we work with various customers of ours to understand the use cases, what particularly would be beneficial to you, and based on that, creating business cases. Case studies, again, they are available on YouTube. In fact, you can follow the link, but if you just type in into YouTube the NSX case studies use cases, you will see an awful lot of them. And obviously, if there are specific use cases, we can download them, or potentially later down the line, we can give you references and potentially customers that you can pick up the phone to, the ones that already successfully deployed and realized the value of the solution. And from an educational perspective, so I mentioned that obviously that was a very high level view of NSX, and what we typically do as a next step is either to have a face-to-face workshop alongside obviously by the partner to take you through some whiteboarding to map out the other use cases potentially and understand exactly where you could use NSX and what you can get out of it that is very specific to your environment. But then also we have the offer to take you and for you to sign up to 2-day technical, we call them test drives. And these are fairly, as it says on the tin, technical deep dives into NSX. They're typically 2-day long, giving you the opportunity to go through the use cases in a lot of detail. But not just that, also giving you the opportunity to do some hands-on practice, because we appreciate that, this is something something different. It can be something quite new to get used to, and having the the ability to experience it and work with system engineers on site to get the most out of it is something we see customers really like and appreciate. And if you do take up that offer, or potentially the workshop with us as well as Bytes, one of the recommendations that I would say is, because NSX covers a number of different areas, it's not just a security platform, it's not just a networking platform. We need to bring, and we tend to work with a number of different teams within organizations. So what I would suggest that if you are willing to take that offer up, make sure that you've got the relevant people involved from a networking virtualization as well as a security perspective in order for you to be able to get the most out of it. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Bytes, and yes, we are done from our side in that case.
Hi guys, my name is Simon Dobbs. I'm a technical pre-sales specialist here at Bytes, so I work with our virtualization team and our storage and business continuity teams. So I thought I'd just follow up off the back of the things from the guys at VMware and just sort of discuss the sort of next steps and how we can sort of help you guys to deliver these the assessment into your environment. So as already been alluded to, kind of trying to understand what's going on in your environment today is kind of the first point when you're sort of going on the journey to delivering NSX. What's really happening in the data center, what the network traffic looks like between your virtual machines is something that sort of traditionally is quite difficult to identify with sort of standard networking tools. So making the sort of use case for deploying NSX can be a little bit tricky because there's things going on within the data center that you're not necessarily aware of. And then the next thing is, again, sort of following on from that, by performing this assessment, we can sort of help you to take the guesswork out of micro-segmentation. As the guys at VMware have sort of already alluded to, the sort of network insight tool can help us to see the flow of traffic between your virtual machines and to the external world, and it allows us to sort of report back to you guys on what that looks like and how best you should deploy micro-segmentation, one, to make it secure, and two, to make sure that it's going to work properly straight away and you're not going to run into any issues and potentially close off application and port flows that you need to actually be open. And again, because it's looking at this virtual layer and giving you better insight into what's going on, it allows us to make some recommendations around optimizing your network performance as well, getting more out of the hardware that you do have, making efficiency savings by having VMs running together that you didn't necessarily realize were using so much networking traffic. So it's sort of almost like a kind of a health check almost as well of what's going on today, and they're helping us to allow you to plan what you need to do tomorrow and get the most out of NSX. In terms of what the engagement would look like, on day one, we'd install the appliance into your data center, which is a nice straightforward thing to do, which can be done nice and quickly. We then leave it to run for a couple of days to start gathering data, and it starts gaining an insight into what's going on between your virtual machines and identifying the proportion of traffic that's being switched or routed, and you know, hairpinning and all those sorts of things, we can start to see exactly what's going on and allow us to start thinking about the sort of right way to design the network going forwards. Then as an endpoint, we've produced a report summarizing the data center traffic, and we can highlight areas where you can make key sort of CapEx and OpEx savings, and also recommendations around the best way to group your VMs if you do look to deploy micro-segmentation, flag potential areas where there could be security concerns, and sort of generally just sort of optimize the virtual environment from a networking perspective rather than just sort of the more traditional virtual machine compute side of things. Then on day 7, we schedule a wrap-up which will include ourselves, you guys, obviously you guys, and then some people from VMware as well, and we'll run through the findings and sort of discuss next steps and help you guys to build out a sort of business case to get NSX up and running. So that was it for me. Just a sort of quick wrap up to sort of hopefully show you some of the benefits of running the assessment. I should also point out that we run it free of charge. So yeah, if it sounds of interest to you guys, then let us know and we can discuss the next steps. And with that, if anyone has any questions, then feel free to either pop it in the chat window or unmute yourselves and then let us know. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you, Simon. So as mentioned, if you do have any questions, just pop those in the questions box and we will answer those for you shortly. So we have a question here from Franklin, who's asked, if you have an Enterprise Plus with Ops Manager, are you already licensed for NSX or do you need a separate license?
NSX is licensed separately.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Rika.
So I guess I don't know if you've got any more questions coming up, Amy, but if there aren't any, what I'm going to do is, as Amy mentioned in the beginning, you'll get the recording, etc. But I'll also send out a couple of follow-up information with the dates for extra sessions and contact details. So you know, obviously you can reach out to your account manager, but and yeah, more than happy to answer any further questions or you know, provide further support if needed from our side as well. But
we
yeah,
do actually have a question that's just popped up here. This is from Andrew. He said, how is VRNI licensed? Is that per CPU again?
So that is, yeah, same as NSX. Per CPU, I guess the bad news is that it isn't part of NSX licensing. That is again something that comes as a separate platform or product.
But what is worth mentioning about the vRealize Network Insight tool is while it's geared up for use and maximizes the benefit for customers who have deployed NSX, you can also monitor hardware platforms. So there are capabilities within it to actually do flow monitoring with a number of hardware devices, and it does it through different protocols. So there is a hardware compatibility list of sort of certified or tested devices where we've done this with, and there's a lot of vendors who are on there, by the way. Don't assume it's just a very limited set, and we will not charge you additional licenses for monitoring any hardware products. So if a customer has a modest VMware vSphere estate that they want to license and put NSX on there and potentially the VRNI as well, then you can potentially fill your boots with the number of hardware platforms you want to add to that monitoring platform as well.
Thanks, Ramesh. So we have another question here from Franklin. He's asked, can you get NSX through the ELA model?
Yeah, that's right. So there are a number of different ways that obviously we can do the commercials and give you the framework. ELA is one route, obviously, if you understand how things work. Yeah, so yeah, the short answer is yes, we can do ELAs, or we can do standalone licenses as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rika. So I think that is all the questions we have today. If you do have any questions that you think of kind of outside of the webinar, feel free to email tellmemore@bytes.co.uk, just on the screen there. There's also going to be a feedback form at the end, so if you would like any more information, or if you're interested in the assessment Simon discussed, just pop that in there and one of our specialists will be in touch with you. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining the webinar today, and thank you Rika and Ramesh and Simon for presenting as well.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.